Hello and welcome back, Talon 101. As you know, Hwoarang is built off stances because the moment he does get to start up, the opponent is stuck pretty much in place. Well, in place is pretty much an over exaggeration, but if they do stay in place, right, it sucks for them if they don't sidestep or challenge. And that's the important part because when they do start to challenge, these stances have buttons to solve it and put Hwoarang in pretty good spots like RFF that ends at +6 for that sequence. For left Flamingo stance, that could turn into a launch. And for right Flamingo stance, depending on the frames, it's a knockdown into some pretty good Okizeme. Left foot forward, on the other hand, well, its button isn't glamorous for the situation it's trying to solve. But where it excels, which both Flamingos can't do, RFF can copy it, right, with a backdash into JFSR. But it's in movement, in beautiful, beautiful movement into whiff punishment. And that's what we're going to differentiate in this video, how left foot forward utilizes that movement over the fact that you're forced to press buttons in stance. So the key part is, why are you forced to press buttons in stance? Well, this is pretty much true for pretty much a lot of the characters in the game. Everyone goes back to their default stance. So you know how Lee has Hitman stance. So if I just press D+4, he enters this stance and tells Hwoarang, hey, come over here. And he's got pretty good moves in these stance, and he's got moves that transition to said stance. If Lee does get hit, right? So I'm just gonna record it here and have him at Hitman. If he does get hit, notice where he goes back. He goes back to his default stance. So that's pretty much true for pretty much every character in the game, and Hwoarang is no exception. So for as long as an opponent presses, you're gonna go back to left foot forward. So that's RFF going back to left foot forward. That's left Flamingo going back to left foot forward. And this is right Flamingo going back to left foot forward. But there's a key difference. Right foot forward can block into LFF, and both Flamingo stances can't block. So that does increase the button-based solutions that you are about to do, because you have to press a button if you are here. There's a reason why they give you all this frame advantage, because the only way out is by the button. You're not getting out from movement. You see how I tried to sidestep there at +3, and how Lee still catches Hwoarang with his standing jab. If he was to avoid it, he has to do something like this. But that's still a button with inbuilt movement, and that inbuilt movement still costs him -15 from the last two patches. So that becomes both a blessing and a curse for all of Hwoarang's three main stances that you typically use. Because even if you do end up, let's say, at on counter hit +10, that +10 has to be converted somehow, because you're forced to enter stance in order to get a hit, and that's RFS F4. And if you get that hit, now you've turned +10 into +2. And at which point, at +2, your opponent can now down jab, and SSR duck. Compared to +10, whether you take the +10 or not. So if you don't take it, then yeah, you go for an RFS DF4. And if the opponent does decide to press a button there, you could, theoretically, get that counter hit. But see, you have to make those choices. You have to make those trade-offs. And anytime you do enter a stance, depending on how you're gathering your information, you'll be like, oh, okay, so when I press a button this time when I enter Flamingo, I gotta press the faster one. Okay, but what if they have a throw break? Oh, okay, so now left Flamingo isn't exactly the option. So let's go straight for right Flamingo and, go full head steam. But what happens if they duck the next time around, right? Now you're in trouble, because now you get launch punished for that. And then if we go back to that standing jab, it's like, okay, what if I just want to remain safer? Okay, I can high crush into, right? But then it's like, you're always throwing out a card. You're never not throwing a card when you're in his stances. Again, RFF is the lone exception, but you're kind of leaning into buttons in RFF because, again, right, RFF has generally the better buttons and the better situations. I'm not saying that you couldn't simply move around what the opponent wants to do, but there's more incentive to press that button. So you start to mix and match pressing and not pressing. Either you go to the next option, right, and pray you don't lose, right? Or you fake out the button. So let's, make it simpler. So instead of a standing jab, let's go to a down jab. And we're going to use the 1-2-4 situation on block. So you know the 1-2-4 situation on block, it's basically RFS F4 every single day. Both you and your opponent know that because of your I8 high, all your RFS situations are pretty much, in quotation marks, protected. But as we mentioned earlier, you are forced to press that button. So the fake out then is to simply go for a jab string and 1-2 forward 3. If not 1-2 forward 3, 1-2 F4. But of course, right, we're doing a down jab here. So you're not considering 1-2 F4 and 1-2 forward 3 is just generally the far safer option. So instead of entering and going for the gambling part of 33%, 33%, 33%, you go straight for a button. Now here's the only downside with going into straight a string. If once I advance this one frame and another, you notice that Lee's starting to move down before, Hwoarang's kick is about to hit him, as it would. The thing is, do I know what button this is? I do not. The hit comes, Lee gets pushed away. Did you identify what button Lee was about to press there? Did you know if it was down forward 1? Did you know if it was a down jab? Did you know if it was down 3? Those are, animations that could potentially come out. It could be blazing kick. It could be his unsafe launcher. So the only thing you really confirm at this point, in order to complement, button-based solutions, in order to make your stance life a little bit easier, is that I know they're gonna press. I need to see their button. So now this is where you see a lot of Hwoarangs of ye olden times, from Tekken 7 all the way down to Tag 2 and even older, where they just let the 1-2 rock. And you either stay in place, sidestep, or backdash. And you want to know. Now you fully confirm that, they are indeed pressing a down jab right after. And that helps you create the next course of action, whether you choose left Flamingo stance and to get that major launch, or right Flamingo stance to still get, the launch, depending on whatever combo route you want. But of course, the same is true as well, where you just use movement to go around it. But you can see how both solutions start to complement each other. So you go straight from stances first, go from a process of elimination, and then eventually forgo the stance to go back into the stance, or forgo the stance completely to get more damage. Because the same is true alternatively for movement-based solutions. So left foot forward and right foot forward tend to excel at that a lot, outside of the fact that you can only really stay in RFF for a certain period of time. But it still rings true where you're using standard moves and moves with pushback to see where they're going to be at. Most especially on FF3, you have that frame advantage to keep them in check if they press a button, but because they can simply backdash all your options, you can't really take those frames. So the opponent has a little bit more leeway, so to speak. But it is indeed the trap, because if the opponent does decide to press that button, you see how you use that movement in right foot forward, or whether you use the movement in left foot forward. But movement-based solutions will also start to have a problem. So if the opponent doesn't bite on your spacing trap, what then? Because there's only so much crouch dashing in front of the opponent's face, or even threatening any cancel of any variety would do to your opponent. Because the only way to win is indeed by pressing buttons. Whether that again be punishing their buttons or using buttons to chip away at their HP. So the thing movement-based solutions get paired up with the most is reset points. If an opponent isn't pressing a button, what you want to do is enter a reset point at an advantage. So that could be something like LFS down 4, and you're in a place where you can block, sidestep, and press. And this is important because now you get to recognize what kind of button they want to press. So if the first time you do this, you see the power crush, and let's say you didn't whiff punish that, then you can call it out next time. And that's where you're using buttons mixed in with movement. So again, right, it's basically a flavor of how you gather information first. Are you gathering the information first by going through a process of elimination of which option is losing first? Or do you test the waters first on like, are they indeed pressing a button before going into a stance-specific button? Or you forgo the stance completely and go for, movement, repositioning to whiff punish. And then go back into stance if they're really staying in place and try to take as much advantage as you can, safe or not safe. And then the opposite is true. Use spacing tools to gain some wall positioning or better advantage to make an opponent's move whiff. And if the opponent doesn't really press a button at those points and there's nothing to whiff punish, that's when you take advantage into your plus frames and reset back into LFF or RFF with safe options so that the opponent is now stuck, stuck guessing between you mix and matching from movement into buttons. And mixing them is very important. The question is, how do you mix it? Are you gonna mix it by going more button heavy and only moving when they least expect it? Are you gonna be using it like a Mashima? You're gonna be crouch dashing in their face and then doing a down forward one or a JFSR and then going for a sidestep and whatnot? Or are you gonna go to the extremes wherein you're gonna go to a stance where you can't block? You're very vulnerable and you're forced to press a button, but you're gonna introduce that space between you and your opponent, and you're inviting that challenge for them to press into this no man's land. But then, of course, you're the one risking it. But of course, you do have a power crush to keep them in check. And you do have a low crushing high at +6. And of course, a low crushing mid that's only up to -10. Knowing what your stances are giving you versus what your non-stance is giving you is very important, because you're going to need the other solution eventually. Whether that be a space into whiff punish, space into reposition, or reset back into safety and then back to movement. Or was it button, 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 right? Until, the opponent finally gives. Or if they're not giving, instead of just pressing nonstop, go for a bigger button while you're back into a reset point where you're a little bit more safer. But yeah, that has been button-based solutions and movement-based solutions, and how left foot forward and right foot forward tend to use movement a lot more. Of course, RFF has the best of both worlds, but the only downside is that you go back to left foot forward, and how both Flamingo stances are 100% button-based, and that you're always forced to press a button, even if it means foregoing the stance from time to time. So again, that has been the lesson for this video. I've been Frontier, and thank you for watching.